Now let's go ahead and talk about the rollout of Obamacare. There have been some issues with it, and the next video explains exactly what those issues are.
In Texas and around the country, uninsured Americans flooded the government and state websites trying to sign up for the health care exchanges on the first day of enrollment.
It affected me right away.
Deborah Lee Lazis of New Hampshire has been looking forward to finally getting health insurance, but getting signed up was challenging.
They're telling me the system is down at the moment.
During a Rose Garden appearance, President Barack Obama touted that the Affordable Care Act was open for business despite the government shutdown. But he did acknowledge glitches hampering online enrollment.
The reason is because more than 1 million people visited healthcare.gov before 7 in the morning.
The nationwide rollout comes after months of buildup in which marketplaces have been praised and vilified. It represents the biggest expansion in health care coverage in nearly 50 years.
Now, the funny thing about this is, I don't think the glitches are really that big of a deal. I mean, when you really think about it, you have a huge number of Americans who really want health insurance, so they're going to the exchange, they're going to the website, they're trying to get health insurance. That doesn't mean that Obamacare is a failure. But Republicans are upset with the media for not focusing on the glitches enough, which I think is hilarious because you guys are the reason why the media isn't focusing on it. We're now focused on a government shutdown that you are responsible for, and the American people continuously blame you for. So the Republicans are being complete clowns when it comes to this issue, and I think it's hilarious. Now, Desi, I want to open up the conversation with you. Now, what are your thoughts on these technical glitches? Do you think it's enough for people to think that Obamacare is a failure?
Oh, I don't think they're going to think it's a failure. I think most people, most smart people and informed people realize that this is going to be a difficult and big program to roll out, and that there are going to be issues with that. So I don't think it's that surprising. It's kind of funny the way the media portrayed it, as in this is some sort of, hey, is this to show that Obamacare is a failure on the first day? It's just ridiculous, you know. We'll know later on. I mean, it's going to take some time to figure out just how bad these glitches are. Do they fix them in time? Do they not? You know, it's really too early to tell.
Yeah, TYT has been around for a very long time, I think since 2002, I believe, and we've had glitches with our website and with our technology since the beginning. Like they continue, and hopefully we're not considered a failure.
As of today, we can't always record the things we think we're recording.
Right, exactly.
You might not actually be watching this right now because of problems like that.
Exactly.
But yeah, like just like you said, it's a huge program, so you expect that it's probably going to fail. It's an online program. When GTA 5 Online launched just a couple weeks ago, it didn't work at all. And in a couple weeks, it'll work, and you'll forget about the problems early on. That's just how it goes. It's not like Obamacare is something that you sign on for. You have a 2-week window, and then that's it for the rest of your life. You'll be signing up every year. Like, we're going to get past this. And the fact that the Republicans are actually turning to this as their critique of Obamacare now, I think that it's laughable, it's pathetic, and it's not like they wouldn't be attacking Obamacare in some other area or some other aspect if not for this.
What's incredible to me is Obamacare is essentially a huge compromise with Republicans. You guys know this at this point. I mean, it's modeled after what Romney passed in Massachusetts. I mean, it's a huge handout to private insurers. It's not by any means a liberal or progressive form of healthcare in America. So why is it, Jimmy, that Republicans are so against it and they refuse to negotiate on a government budget because of the Affordable Care Act?
Because it takes away liberty and freedom, and I like Ronald Reagan. So I don't care what you say, and I don't think the government should be running health care. And and I don't even have health insurance, so I don't care. So that someone actually said that to me on Facebook about it.
Wow. Clever.
They were upset about, they had posted a video of this woman talking about in 1 minute everything that's wrong with Obamacare, and of course she mentioned the 16,000 IRS agents that isn't happening, and so I linked that video that we all know about from the Young Turks of Ronald Reagan warning us about Medicare and how it's going to bring socialism and the end of freedom. So I linked that. I go, just so you know that they've been always trying to scare us about things that are good for us. And she said that back. I like Ronald Reagan, and I don't care whatever you say, government shouldn't be running health care, and I don't even have health insurance. And I'm just like, what do you say to those people? Well, if you're a Republican, you say vote for me.
Yeah.
And so it's funny that they're shutting down the government now because Is there a better reason to shut down the government than denying people health care? I don't think so.
It's kind of incredible. And I think a lot of young people have that mindset as well, because I think one of the downfalls of the Affordable Care Act right now is the fact that young, healthy people are going to have to pay more for their health care. And a lot of young, healthy people don't have health care to begin with, so they're like, why the hell do I even need this? I don't need to go to the doctor. But it's good to know that there is a safety net there, just in case you get into a terrible, God forbid, a terrible car accident or
Young
something.
people never get in accidents.
Never,
happens.
exactly.
Are you kidding me? No. So so it's always been that way. By the way, they say, well, how the government? Well, that's how private insurance works. That's how insurance works. That you spread the risk over of what people, healthy and sick people. So to say that, why should we make younger people pay more? That's how insurance works. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And so one of the common sort of liberal observances of what's going on and why they're willing to shut down the government over this and why they care so much about Obamacare that I think is accurate but doesn't go far enough is that this program is probably going to succeed, even though it could be much stronger in many areas. We admit that. And the Republicans don't want government to work, so they don't like this because they don't want people to rely on government. That's totally true, but it's not that they don't want government to work. They do want some areas of government to work, and those areas work very well for what they want, which is like the current tax system, limitations on campaign finance regulation, the military, the Justice
system
Department.
doesn't work.
No,
so that's why they like it.
Well, exactly. I'm saying it works in the way that they want to. And the health insurance system works perfectly fine for very rich Americans.
Yes.
Exactly.
And so it doesn't need reform for them. We need to rope them in because, as you said, we need subsidies and things like that. We need the money to be coming from a wide base and everything. And so I think that the liberals are right, that they're scared of this because it represents an area that, just like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, Americans will come to love and rely on. But I think that you can't miss the fact that Republicans have other areas of government that they're perfectly fine with, and even when the government shuts down, those areas continue to work the way they want.
Yeah, and it's incredible because when you look at the Republicans, they have tried every branch of government to repeal the Affordable Care Act. They tried to do it through the legislative system, right? And they failed more than 40 times. They tried to do so through our judiciary. They failed, okay? The Supreme Court basically said, no, not unconstitutional, get the hell out of here. They tried to do so through the executive branch by getting Mitt Romney elected, and that was part of his platform. The American people rejected it. Give it up. They want health care. The system that we had in place did not work. However, that's not to say that the Affordable Care Act doesn't have a few issues. And I would start with the federal mandate and no cap on costs. So do you want to take that on, Jimmy?
Yes, well, that's the problem, right? So if you're going to make someone buy something, you have to provide an alternative to it that again controls costs. So that's why people say you have to have the public option. You can't make people buy from a private person something that that there's no cost control on. So that's completely correct. Yes.
Yeah.
That is the problem with Obamacare. That's one of the problems with Obamacare. We all know though that eventually we're going to get to single payer. Right, because isn't like 100 million people in America already getting their healthcare subsidized by the government, and whether you're a veteran or whether it's Medicaid or whether it's Medicare or something else. So it's just about time it's a good step in the first direction, don't you think?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, also remember with the rollout of Social Security originally in the 30s and the 40s, it was very, very limited to the number of people who could sign up. There were a lot of folks who were not included in the folks that were allowed to sign up for the initial rollout of Social Security, which has become a very important anti-poverty program for senior citizens in this country. It's the reason why our senior citizens are not eating cat food. That's what they used to have to do. People died of starvation in the 1910s, the 20s, the 30s, and before that, before we had this kind of safety net. So with that rollout only starting among a limited group of people and then including more and more as time went on, I think we can hope, I don't know that we can guarantee it with the kind of tidal wave of opposition from the Republicans that never ends, ever, but I think that we can hope to see some adjustments to it so that it becomes more expansive.
Really fast, so that's a stereotypical example people give of the eating the cat food, which I think is funny because we're going to be talking later about chicken nuggets. I guarantee the cat food more nutritious than the McDonald's chicken nuggets.
Yes,
You said that Social Security, great anti-poverty program, which it is. Also, Medicare, great anti-poverty program, because before Medicare was instituted, 33% of senior citizens lived in poverty. 10 years after Medicare was instituted, that number was down to 11%. So it's the same thing that happens with non-senior citizens. People go bankrupt now when they get an illness, a lot of times even when they have insurance. So so that's why I think these scare tactics and why the public are generally against the Republicans on this because those scare stories don't work anymore. We've had enough horror stories right here in America. It's touched enough people. Everyone lives in fear of getting sick.
Yeah.
And by the way, in terms of the media coverage, so the Republicans are mad that they didn't focus enough on the glitches. Just less than a week before the program was actually rolled out and you could sign up, we had the CBO giving revised estimates of how much it was actually going to cost. And for many people, it's actually about 40% less than their initial estimates. So far cheaper than we thought it was going to be for most people once you factor in the subsidies. How much coverage of that was there?
Right.
But no, the glitches are the big story.
There hasn't been much coverage of that. In fact, I mean, any type of coverage I hear about the cost, it seems to imply that it's going to cost Americans more, but they're specifically talking about people in their 20s. And one thing to keep in mind, I mean, you get to stay a lot longer on your parents' health insurance if you're in your 20s. And if you are, I think, above the age of 25 and you have to get insurance on your own, most people in their late 20s aren't making enough money in order to not qualify for the subsidies that they would get from the government. You'd have to make over $46,000 a year in order to not qualify for those government subsidies. And I can tell you that most 20-somethings don't qualify.
Well, and also when you looked at the comparisons prior to the rollout in the media that I saw, they were comparing bare bones plans where you get almost nothing except maybe catastrophic, $5,000 deductible and a $1 million limit. And if you get in a horrible, horrific accident where you can't work for the rest of your life, that is all it would cover. This, the programs that are being offered now, the policies that are being offered now for young people, they might cost more, but they're actually comprehensive.
Right.
So they include, other things like prenatal care, other stuff that would just be preventive care that you should be getting.
Do you hear people? I hear people say this stuff all the time. That hey, my health insurance just went up $300. Thanks, Obamacare. It's like, oh yeah, because before Obamacare, remember how insurance was going down every year?
Oh, totally.
Yeah, it's like, oh, now it's going up. This is crazy.
I also think it's hilarious, and it says a lot about the media. When you guys were talking about how, before, the media was talking about the prices and it was going to be expensive, and now they're all they want to talk about are the glitches, and the GOP is mad because the media didn't play along and give them their anti-Obamacare campaign. They didn't cover it for them like they would have normally if the Republicans hadn't stolen their own thunder by shutting down the government.
Fair enough. So I kind of want to end with a question about the future. John, what do you think the future of the Affordable Care Act is going to look like? I mean, there was a recent poll asking Americans what they thought about the Affordable Care Act. The majority of Americans said that they were in favor of it. And then in the same poll, they asked, what do you think of Obamacare? Majority of Americans were against it. And it's incredible because they hear Obamacare and they're like, I don't want the president taking care of me. So it's interesting because my prediction would be that as soon as the rollout is complete, the majority of Americans are going to be happy with it, but I could be wrong about that.
Yeah, I think that over time, the opposition to the idea of Obamacare specifically is going to go down. Generally, once the president is no longer in office, people's hostile reactions to them die down. And so if that's still what we're calling it, I think that they'll have much less of a problem in about 5 years or so. I don't know. I'm worried about the lack of cost controls that he's saying, and it could be that this is like a Band-Aid on a bigger wound that is not being healed, and the cost will continue to rise, in which case maybe in 5 or 10 years we're going to have to come back with another major policy. If not, and if this does actually to some extent stop the constant rise in the insurance premiums that we've seen over 10, 20 years, then it could be that the next step to expanding this is one, possibly offering up a public option. And if not that, then the federal subsidies that are going out, those could be ratcheted up a couple of notches until you get to a point where, we don't have a public option, but the government could be paying 50%, 80%, and you get effectively towards the same thing. All
right, fair enough. And it is important to keep in mind that the United States spends about 17% of its GDP on healthcare. You compare that to countries like France, where they spend, I believe, about 4 to 6%. And it makes you wonder why it is that we spend so much money on healthcare compared to other countries that do have universal coverage.